A young waitress accidentally spilled a drink on the billionaire heir, expecting a reprimand, but receiving a nightmare. Sebastian Crown stood up, radiating sadistic amusement, and demanded scissors immediately. With a cruel grin, he forcibly shaved Zariah Cole's head for fun while the elite crowd watched her tremble in humiliation. Then the doors burst open and her husband walked in. Matteo Valorenzo, the feared Mafia don and the gala's mysterious backer. What Sebastian didn't know was that he had just provoked a man of lethal authority who was about to initiate a cold, scorched earth war to destroy him. Before we witness the destruction of a bully, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story of vindication is going to satisfy your sense of justice, so smash that subscribe button because you do not want to miss the revenge that follows. Zariah Cole was fighting to stay standing. She had been enduring a grueling shift at the prestigious gala, serving the city's most arrogant elites while trying to remain invisible. Her plain service uniform was spotless, her demeanor professional, but underneath, she was exhausted, working desperately to support herself and maintain her independence in a world that viewed her as disposable. Zariah Cole had been on her feet for 11 hours straight. Her back screamed. Her ankles throbbed. The smile she wore felt like a mask carved into her face, cracking at the edges every time another guest snapped their fingers at her like she was a dog. The Crown Harbor Yacht Club glittered with Manhattan's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over men in suits that cost more than her yearly rent and women dripping in diamonds who looked through her like she was glass. Zariah moved between tables with practiced grace, balancing a tray of champagne flutes, refilling glasses for people who never said thank you. This was her second job today. She'd worked the breakfast shift at a cafe in Brooklyn, then rushed across the city to serve dinner to billionaires. Tomorrow she'd do it again. And the day after that. Because her grandmother's home care nurse cost $4,000 a month. Because her little brother Marcus had one more year at Howard and she'd promised their mother before she died that he'd graduate. Because promises meant something to Zariah, even when keeping them broke her body down piece by piece. Nobody here knew her story. Nobody cared. To them, she was just another black girl in a uniform, invisible until they needed a refill. But Zariah had a secret. On her left hand, hidden beneath a simple black glove she told coworkers was for hygiene, sat a ring worth more than this entire yacht club. A 5-carat diamond surrounded by smaller stones, set in platinum. Matteo had slipped it onto her finger 8 months ago in a private ceremony in Tuscany, just the two of them and a priest who asked no questions. Matteo Valorenzo. Her husband. The most dangerous man in New York. They'd met 2 years ago when she was waitressing at a restaurant in Little Italy. He'd come in alone, sat in her section, and watched her work for 3 hours. Didn't say much. Just watched. The next night he came back. And the next. On the 4th night, he'd asked her name. On the 5th, he'd asked if she was afraid of him. She'd told him the truth. She wasn't afraid of anything anymore. Life had already taken everything that mattered. Fear was a luxury for people with something left to lose. He'd smiled then. A real smile, rare on that hard face. And something between them had clicked into place like a key turning in a lock. Matteo had offered to end her struggles overnight. One word and she'd never work another shift. But Zariah refused. She needed to keep this part of herself, the part that earned her own way, that didn't depend on his money or his power. He respected that, even if he hated watching her exhaust herself for people who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as her. Tonight, Matteo was supposed to arrive at 9. He was the anonymous donor behind this gala, though nobody here knew it. Zariah checked her watch. 1 more hour. She just had to survive 1 more hour. Table 7 was the worst in the room. Zariah had known it the moment she saw them. 6 young men in designer suits, voices loud with alcohol and entitlement, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. They radiated the kind of arrogance that came from never hearing the word no. At the head of the table sat Sebastian Crown. She recognized him from the magazines stacked in her grandmother's living room. 28 years old. Heir to the Crown shipping empire. Worth $3 billion he'd never earned. His face was handsome in a cruel way, all sharp angles and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car, and he looked at the world like it owed him something. Zoraya approached carefully, champagne bottle balanced on her tray. She'd done this 1,000 times. Her hands were steady, her movements precise. She was a professional. Refill, sir. Sebastian didn't acknowledge her. Didn't even glance up from his phone. Just thrust his glass in her direction like she was furniture, like she didn't exist as a person at all. Zoraya poured, the golden liquid streaming perfectly into the crystal flute. Then one of Sebastian's friends slapped the table hard, howling at something on his phone. The impact jolted through the surface. Zoraya's tray wobbled. The bottle slipped. Champagne splashed across Sebastian's lap, soaking his pants, his jacket, spreading across the pristine white tablecloth. Time stopped. Sebastian shot to his feet, his chair screeching against the marble floor. His face twisted into something ugly, red with fury, veins bulging at his temples. What the hell did you just do? Zoraya's heart slammed against her ribs. She grabbed napkins immediately, her hands moving on instinct. I'm so sorry, sir. Let me help. I'll get the manager, You'll get the manager. Sebastian's voice boomed across the ballroom. Conversations died. The orchestra stopped playing. Hundreds of eyes turned toward them. This suit is worth $40,000, you stupid girl. His friends were laughing now. Phones came out, cameras pointing at her, recording her humiliation for their entertainment. Zoraya's throat tightened. Sir, it was an accident. The table was bumped. I can pay for the cleaning. I'll work extra shifts. Sebastian grabbed her wrist. His grip was iron, bruising, inescapable. You'll do more than that. Sebastian's grip tightened until Zoraya felt the bones in her wrist grinding together. She tried to pull away, but he was stronger, fueled by rage and the knowledge that no one in this room would stop him. You think you can just ruin my suit and walk away? His voice carried across the silent ballroom. You people need to learn your place. You people. The words hit Zoraya like a slap. She knew exactly what he meant. Sir, please. Her voice trembled despite herself. I said I'll pay for it. I'll do whatever. You're right. You will. Sebastian snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. Get me scissors. Now. Zoraya's blood turned to ice. What? Scissors, Sebastian repeated, louder this time, performing for his audience. This little accident needs to understand what happens when she disrespects her betters. The waiter hesitated, face pale, but someone else was already moving. A man from Sebastian's table produced a pair of silver scissors from his jacket pocket, grinning as he handed them over like this was a game. No. Zoraya tried to back away, but Sebastian yanked her forward, his fingers tangling in her braids. Please. Please don't do this. Should have thought about that before you ruined my evening. He forced her to her knees. The marble floor was cold and hard beneath her. Zoraya looked out at the crowd, at hundreds of faces watching, waiting, phones raised and recording. Not one person moved to help. Not one person said stop. She was alone. The first cut came without warning. Sebastian grabbed a fistful of her braids and hacked through them, the scissors slicing through hair she'd been growing for years. The strands fell around her like black ribbons, scattering across the white marble. Zoraya sobbed. She couldn't help it. Each cut felt like a piece of her soul being ripped away. Sebastian laughed. His friends laughed. Someone in the crowd actually applauded. He wasn't careful. He wasn't trying to be. He carved through her hair in jagged chunks, leaving uneven patches, making her look destroyed. Making her look broken. There. Sebastian released her with a shove that sent her sprawling. Now we're even. Your dignity for my suit. Fair trade. Zoraya's hands flew to her head, feeling the destruction, the stubble, the absence of everything she'd been. Tears streamed down her face as phones clicked and flashed around her. Then the doors opened. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Every head turned toward the massive oak doors as they swung open, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Matteo Valorenzo stepped inside. He wore a black suit that fit like it was sculpted onto his body. Dark tattoos crawled up his neck, disappearing beneath his collar, visible even from across the room. His jaw was clenched tight, his posture rigid, controlled. But it was his eyes that made people step back without thinking. Cold. Empty. The eyes of a man who had seen death and dealt it in equal measure. He moved forward slowly, deliberately, his footsteps echoing on the marble. The crowd parted like water, instinct screaming at them to get out of his path. Nobody knew exactly who he was, but everyone understood what he was. Danger given human form. Matteo's gaze swept the room until it found her. Zoraya. On her knees. Tears streaming down her face. Her beautiful braids scattered across the floor like fallen soldiers. Her head butchered into jagged patches. And standing above her, still holding the scissors, was a smug young man in a champagne-stained suit. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Then Matteo crossed the remaining distance in 5 long strides. He didn't speak. Didn't acknowledge anyone else in the room. He simply removed his jacket with careful, precise movements and draped it over Zoraya's trembling shoulders. Covering her. Protecting her. Claiming her. Stand up, amore. His voice was soft. Gentle. Terrifying. Zoraya rose on shaking legs, and Matteo guided her behind him, placing his body between her and Sebastian like a wall of flesh and fury. Then he turned to face the man who had touched his wife. Sebastian's smirk faltered. Something flickered in his eyes. Not fear. Not yet. But the beginning of it. Look, man. Sebastian held up his hands, still gripping the scissors. I don't know who you think you are, but this waitress ruined my. Put the scissors down. Matteo's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The command carried through the silent room like a blade. Sebastian hesitated. His friends had stopped laughing. The phones had stopped recording. Everyone was frozen, watching, waiting. I said. Matteo stepped closer, his cold eyes locked onto Sebastian's. Put them down. Before I take your hand with them. The scissors clattered to the floor. Sebastian forced a laugh, but it came out thin and hollow. He straightened his ruined jacket, trying to reclaim some dignity, some authority. He was a crown. He didn't bow to thugs with tattoos. Listen, I don't know what gang you crawled out of, but this is a private event. Sebastian's voice steadied, feeding on his own arrogance. This waitress embarrassed me in front of. She's not a waitress. Matteo's words cut through the air like a blade. Quiet. Final. Sebastian blinked. What? Matteo reached back without looking, his hand finding Zoraya's. He pulled off the black glove she wore, revealing the ring beneath. 5 carats of flawless diamond caught the chandelier light and exploded into 1,000 tiny rainbows. She's my wife. The silence that followed was absolute. Sebastian's face went white. His friends stumbled backward like they'd been shoved. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman gasped. And this event? Matteo continued, his voice still terrifyingly calm. I funded it. Every dollar. Every champagne bottle you've been drinking tonight. The ice sculpture. The orchestra. The building you're standing in. I own it all. Sebastian's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Matteo stepped closer. Close enough that only Sebastian could hear his next words, though everyone saw the way the billionaire's son flinched. You put your hands on what's mine. You cut her hair for entertainment. You made her kneel in front of people while they filmed her humiliation. Matteo's eyes never blinked. So now I'm going to take everything from you. Your money. Your name. Your freedom. Everything you think makes you untouchable. I'm going to strip it away piece by piece until you have nothing left but the memory of this moment. Sebastian stumbled back, nearly tripping over his own feet. You can't. Do you know who my father is? Victor Crown. Shipping empire. Net worth $4.2 billion. 3 offshore accounts in the Caymans. A mistress in Geneva. A federal investigation he thinks he buried in 2019. Matteo smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing anyone in that room had ever seen. I know exactly who your father is. By tomorrow morning, so will everyone else. He turned back to Zaraya, cupping her tear-stained face in his hands with impossible gentleness. Let's go home, amore. I have work to do. Matteo didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse office, phone pressed to his ear, issuing commands in a voice that never rose above a murmur. Zaraya watched from the doorway, wrapped in his robe, her hand drifting to her ruined hair every few minutes like she still couldn't believe it was gone. By midnight, the first domino fell. A banker in Zurich received a call from a man he owed his life to. Within an hour, Sebastian Crown's personal accounts were frozen. $6 million, locked away behind red tape that would take months to untangle. The official reason cited suspicious activity. The real reason sat in a Manhattan penthouse, sipping whiskey and making his next call. By 2 in the morning, the videos hit the internet. Not the videos Sebastian's friends had recorded. Those had been scrubbed, purchased from every phone at the gala by Matteo's people before anyone left the building. No, these were different. Security footage from nightclubs showing Sebastian shoving a woman into a wall. Testimonies from former assistants describing verbal abuse and threats. A settlement from 3 years ago that had been buried under an avalanche of Crown family lawyers. All of it surfaced simultaneously on every gossip site, news outlet, and social media platform that mattered. By dawn, Sebastian Crown was trending. The headlines wrote themselves. Billionaire heir's history of abuse exposed. Crown son caught on camera assaulting waitress. Women come forward with disturbing allegations against Sebastian Crown. Matteo's media contacts fed the frenzy. Journalists who owed him favors ran the story on morning shows. Bloggers who feared him amplified every accusation. By the time Sebastian woke up in his penthouse, his name was poison. But Matteo wasn't finished. He made one more call. A friend in the Justice Department. A quiet conversation about the federal investigation Victor Crown thought he'd buried. By noon, subpoenas were being prepared. Crown shipping stock dropped 9% before lunch. Matteo finally set down his phone as sunlight filled the office. Zaraya stood behind him, her hands resting on his shoulders. Is it done? She whispered. Not yet. He reached up and covered her hand with his. This is just the beginning. By the time I'm finished, Sebastian Crown won't have a future left to destroy. Sebastian Crown woke to chaos. His phone had exploded overnight. Hundreds of notifications. Missed calls from his publicist, his lawyer, his mother. Text messages from friends telling him to check the news. He scrolled through the headlines with trembling fingers, watching his entire life unravel in real time. But the worst was the voicemail from his father. My office. 1 hour. Don't speak to anyone. Sebastian had never heard that tone before. Cold. Distant. Like Victor Crown was already calculating how much his son would cost him. He arrived at Crown Tower to find security waiting in the lobby. They escorted him upstairs like a criminal, not an heir. His access card had already been deactivated. His name removed from the executive floor directory. Victor Crown stood behind his desk, watching the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. He didn't turn around when Sebastian entered. "Dad, I can explain." "Explain what?" Victor's voice was ice. "Explain why federal investigators are suddenly interested in our Cayman accounts. Explain why our stock dropped 14% this morning. Explain why the board is demanding an emergency meeting to discuss removing me as chairman." Sebastian's mouth went dry. This is insane. It was just some waitress. She spilled champagne on my. She's Matteo Valorenzo's wife. The name hung in the air like smoke. Sebastian felt his knees weaken. You assaulted the wife of the most connected man in the eastern seaboard. Victor finally turned, and his eyes were empty of anything resembling fatherly love. A man who owns judges. Who owns senators. Who could bury our entire empire with a single phone call. I didn't know. You didn't think. Victor slammed his hand on the desk. And now I have to choose between saving this company or saving you. Sebastian stepped forward. Dad, please. I'm your son. You were my son. Victor pressed a button on his phone. Security will escort you out. Your trust fund is frozen. Your credit cards are cancelled. Your apartment belongs to the company, so you have 48 hours to vacate. You can't do this. I'm doing this to survive. Victor sat down and turned his chair away. You brought a war to my doorstep, Sebastian. Now you'll fight it alone. 3 weeks later, Sebastian Crown was unrecognizable. He'd lost 15 pounds. His designer stubble had grown into an unkempt beard. His clothes, the only ones he'd managed to grab before being locked out of his apartment, were wrinkled and stained. He'd been sleeping in a hotel that still accepted cash, burning through the few $1,000s he'd had in his wallet when his world collapsed. Every door he tried was closed. Old friends wouldn't return his calls. Former business associates pretended not to know him. Even his mother had stopped answering, warned by Victor that any contact would cost her the divorce settlement she depended on. Sebastian was alone. Broke. Desperate. So he did the only thing he could think of. He went to beg. He waited outside the Valorenzo penthouse for 6 hours, watching the entrance from across the street. When he finally saw Zoraya emerge, he moved before he could lose his nerve. Please. He stepped into her path, hands raised. Please, I just need 5 minutes. Zoraya stopped. Her hair had been styled into a short, elegant cut that framed her face beautifully. She looked different. Stronger. The broken woman from the gala was gone, replaced by someone who carried herself like royalty. I'm sorry. Sebastian's voice cracked. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was drunk and stupid and I never should have touched you. Please, just talk to your husband. Tell him I've learned my lesson. Tell him I'll do anything. Zoraya studied him for a long moment. Then she shook her head. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry it had consequences. No, You called me, you people. You shaved my head while a room full of people watched and laughed. You treated me like I wasn't human. Her voice was steady, calm. And now you want mercy? A shadow fell over Sebastian. He turned and felt his stomach drop. Matteo Valorenzo stood 3 feet away, flanked by 2 men in black suits. His expression was empty. His eyes were death. You were told to stay away from my wife. I just wanted to apologize. You wanted to save yourself. Matteo stepped closer, and Sebastian stumbled backward. There is no apology. There is no mercy. There is only what comes next. He nodded to his men. Make sure he's at the courthouse tomorrow. The district attorney is expecting him. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the gallery, cameras forbidden but notebooks ready. The trial had captivated the city for weeks, every detail splashed across headlines, every witness testimony dissected on evening news. Sebastian Crown sat at the defense table, a hollow shell of the man who had once commanded rooms with his arrogance. His borrowed suit hung loose on his frame. His eyes were empty, defeated. The parade of witnesses had destroyed him. Former victims who finally found their courage. Security footage that couldn't be disputed. The video from the gala that Matteo had allowed to surface at precisely the right moment. The jury had deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Sebastian didn't react when the verdict was read. He just stared at the table, his shoulders slumped, his fight completely gone. The judge's voice cut through the murmurs. Mr. Crown, your actions displayed a profound contempt for human dignity. You used your wealth and status as weapons against those you deemed beneath you. This court sentences you to 2 years in state prison, followed by 5 years probation and mandatory counseling. Sebastian's lawyer caught him as his legs buckled. In the gallery, Soraya watched without expression. Matteo's hand rested on her knee, warm and steady. She felt no joy. No triumph. Just a quiet sense of closure, like a wound finally allowed to heal. They left the courthouse through a private exit, avoiding the cameras and shouted questions. The car ride home was silent, but it was a comfortable silence. The silence of two people who understood each other completely. That evening, they stood on their penthouse balcony, Manhattan glittering beneath them like a sea of fallen stars. Soraya leaned into Matteo's chest, his arms wrapped around her from behind. It's over, she whispered. It's over. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, to the short curls she'd learned to love. No one will ever touch you again. Soraya turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had burned down an empire for her. Thank you. For being my monster when I needed one. Matteo cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. For you, amore, I will be whatever you need. Always. The city sparkled below them, unaware and uncaring. But one message had been sent and received. The Valorenzos protect what's theirs. If you believe that real love means protecting each other no matter the cost, smash that subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Soraya's place. And share this with someone who needs to know that some monsters are worth keeping, because they'll burn the whole world down just to keep you safe. Please subscribe now and hit that notification bell so you never miss another incredible story.